Vroom, 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 vroom. Honk, honk. Get in, losers. We're going struggling. Vroom, 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 vroom. Hey guys, welcome to another ride in the Strugglebus, where every wheel is an empty triangle. As we head into the new year, I am bringing a new series to the channel, one I'm lovingly referring to as Where the Do I Play? And the concept behind these videos is we're going to take a look at a single board state that's in the mid-game and look at it from the perspective of both players and figure out what the plan here is. As we all know, the middle of the game is really the most difficult part and is where the vast majority of our games are won or lost. And we often get into these mid-game situations and we just don't know where to play because there are many options, or we just don't know what we should be looking for to do. So this video series should help address that. And you might be wondering, where am I getting these games from? Well, members of my Discord channel are posting their games with questions in the mid-game, asking, where should I be playing here? And so that's where I'm going to be getting these from. Also talking about Discord, as I went in to make the first video in a long while, I asked members, what video would you guys want to see? Do you want to see a bus ride, or do you want to see where the should I play? And the overwhelming vote result was for this video. So if you want to help guide where my videos can go, you can join the Discord and be part of the discussion there. If not, obviously no worries. But it's something I'm trying to build up a little more this year. Also, before I dive into this review, I'd like to thank you guys for watching these videos, and I'd like to thank my Patreon subscribers for supporting this channel. So anyway, let's take a look at this board position. Okay, so here's the board position that was sent to me. And we're not going to go through how the game got here. I think we can pretty much envision how this went. The right side looks a little strange. We're not exactly sure what happens there. But this is the board that we have in front of us. And it is Black's turn. The player who sent this game in was playing Black this game. So looking at this board, we first kind of need to figure out, who's winning by how much. And looking at this, it's a really close game. I would say that this bottom right corner is pretty much about the same size as the top left. There's also Aji in both corners, which we will absolutely be getting into. And then we have this bottom right corner for white, which is a little larger and a little more secure than the corner for black. And then black has this group here, which kind of mirrors white's group here. And then white has a little more on the side here. And then black's got some potential, some obvious potential and influence in the center. So for me, I love influence, but we can't deny that white does seem to have a few more solidified points on this board. So it's a little difficult to say exactly who's ahead here. It's close enough that we're just going to say that this game is fairly even. I think, the strength of the players playing would dictate who would be better positioned on this board. AI prefers black. Some stronger players I played to said that they preferred white, so it's obviously pretty close. So anyway, what should black be doing here? So let's take a look at how I would analyze this. So the first step I'd do is I'd figure out, hey, who's ahead and by how much. It's a little tough for me to determine here. Again, white seems to have a few more points, but black has a lot more potential in this center. And it's black's turn. If this was white's turn, I'd probably say that white is ahead. So I think it's close enough. That's just based on whose turn it's in. So let's look at some things that I would also think about in this, which is, who has actual real points on this board, and then who has potential. Where's the potential? And so there are kind of like three big glaring areas for potential and points. And we'll just start with the simpler of the two, which are the two corners. So this corner kind of looks like it's black's, except white can still play c17 and really muck things up here. And this bottom left kind of looks like it's white similarly, but even with the extra stones here, c3 is still a move that could work for black. So I'm still considering these areas as potential because they are not solidified points yet. And then there's the obvious potential that's in the center of the board, but it's the center and white has 2 stones that they could run to if they threw a stone into the center. So if black tries to play a move just around here to try to claim the center, it's going to be really tough for black to contain a stone like this. And so it's really hard to say how many points we're really going to get in the center and how we're going to actually go about turning that center into points. So this is cheating a little bit, but I'm going to skip straight to the end of the game to show you just how little we actually end up getting in the center. So black does have some points here, but it's worth noting that N14 is already on this board and was already pretty much dead. So black really didn't expand much beyond that. It all turned into dame into the center, which is pretty much what we'd expect in a board like this. So again, these 2 stones died, but black really didn't get much more than that because it's really hard to control the center. So that's why I'm struggling to really evaluate how much potential we can lean on here. So we need to find points in other ways and or reductions in other ways. So looking at that, the next step is, are there any weak groups on this board? So we can look at this from black. I would say that this bottom group, nice and healthy. The corner, nice and healthy. This corner is also healthy because it's connected to the outside. And then obviously the center is insanely strong. So black doesn't really have any weak groups on this board. Looking at white, as I unmark these, the bottom right group is very strong. It's not really going to be able to be attacked, just be reduced. The corner is nice and strong. I wouldn't say that this is necessarily weak, this side here, though there's obviously some aji, but these 2 stones can connect up top or connect to the corner or run to the center. So even if we consider these separate groups, these 2 stones perfectly strong. Obviously the corner is perfectly strong. And then the top group is already alive, so that group is plenty strong. And then we've got this group on the side here. And looking at it, it looks really strong. But there's some pretty menacing aji that's in that corner that we'll also get into. So those are kind of the steps that I'm looking at when I evaluate mid-game positions, is who's ahead and by how much, where's the potential on the board, and are there any weak groups that we either need to defend or that we can go after. And so there aren't many weaknesses on this board, so this is really going to come down to where's the potential and where are the points and what can we do about that. And when that's the case, when all the groups are strong and we're just looking at potential and reductions, we're kind of actually pretty quickly getting to endgame. We're obviously not in endgame here, but in those situations, we can start looking at large endgame moves earlier than we typically would. Again, this is only move 64, so a little early for second line moves, but we can't deny how large a move like L2 is on this board. It claims more points, it threatens to take points away from white. It's still a little early for this move, but in many games, move 64 would be way too early for this. So those are the things that I'm looking into. Who's winning? Where's the potential? Where are the weaknesses? So let's get to the crux of the question. Where would we consider playing as black here? So there are a number of areas, right, that I highlighted, and I think the focus we want to look at are the corners. And so we can consider invading white's corner or going to protect our corner. So again, it is worth pointing out that both 3/3 moves are playable. These invasions, both of these invasions will work. Both players will get something very meaningful out of playing these 3/3 stones. So both players are putting a priority on getting those invasions and defending those invasions. So we can look at either one. It is worth noting that if we play F18 first to help protect the 3/3 here, this really looks to undercut this group. If white ignores to go protect the corner here, black has a pretty meaningful follow-up with something like this, and now all of a sudden white pretty much lost all the points in the top. Black gets a large corner, which matches white's large corner. So it looks like the trade is somewhat even, except for the fact that white really lost a lot on the top here. And now if white tries to do the same thing to black, white is potentially going to be in a lot of trouble, either losing these 2 stones or giving up a vital point at something like m19. So this is a move that I think white would probably want to respond to. And if that's the case, we could potentially play this and then look at playing something like c3. So those are options. Another option is we could look at and say, well, we really want to turn this potential into something meaningful. And so we could look at a move like m7 to try to block this group, but that leaves some weak shape. And again, I don't think we can necessarily stop a stone like this. So if we want to go for the center, I think we have to go about it on the other side. I think we would want to do something like lean on this group, because this group is strong, so we can lean on it. We can play these attachment moves because we're not attaching to weak stones. We're attaching to strong stones here. And if white ignores this, then white's going to lose a lot on the side. Let's say that that white goes to fix a move that we'll get into in a little bit. A move like this is pretty severe. And now white's going to potentially lose a lot of points on the side. And so if white defends, now we could potentially play a move like this. And we can see that we are carving out some real points here. So that is an option as well, and one that I looked into a little bit. I don't think I would play it on this board, though, but it is an option. I do think that this would be a reasonable move for black to play here, other than the corners. The last move I want to go over for really strong players is a very obvious move. Looking at this, their spidey senses will be tingling a little bit at playing s12. It's a very obvious shape point. It's hard to see the exact status of white here. It looks like that white might be okay, but there is a pretty serious move here. And this isn't necessarily one that I would find. I would probably look at something like this. I would look at s12 and go, that's an obvious, scary move for white, but I don't really know how to use it yet, so I would probably look at something like this to threaten it. But let's take a look at the sequence. This is something that AI pointed out to me. Again, I definitely would not have been able to see this full sequence. But black can play here, which threatens this peep. White is going to protect the peep. Black can now threaten to connect to the stone. White will block here, and now black can extend. And doing this really grows this corner, right? So black is getting something very meaningful out of this. And also, white isn't alive yet. So white still needs to play some moves, and so now white's going to play here to extend their eye space. We would block, and then white would play here for to create more eye space. Black goes to connect, white threatens to cut. Black connects, white Ataris, black connects, and white finally lives. But let's look at how many points white has here. 2. White has 2 points in Gote. And look at how many points black just solidified in the corner. So this is a huge exchange for black. Though admittedly a very difficult one to see, and one I likely would not see. But this is something that AI showed me. So it's worth pointing out that undoubtedly the biggest move on the board right now is s12. But that's a tough one to see. And that still doesn't really change what our plan is for this game. I mean, if you see that exchange, great, you can play it, and then it ends in sente for black. But then we're still back to, okay, now what, right? Because it's still kind of the same board. So again, I would really be aiming at the corners. I would probably play something like f18 first. I would expect white to respond. I would not come back to protect this stone. This really is just played to give you a little more strength in the corner. What's nice about this exchange is when we tanuki away from it, white can take that stone, that's fine. But now our corner is much stronger, and now if white captures, we get a second move in a row, which obviously is pretty detrimental on this board. So there's no way that white's going to Atari the stone. White has to respond to this. Things get a little complicated here. This is a very common invasion. after the joseki that we all know and love. The color is going to be swapped here, but that's fine. After white approaches and black kicks, white stands up. It doesn't really matter if black plays high or low. It'll work all the same. Here, black played high, white extended, and black played away, and the game continued. This is a very common follow-up. And there are really only 3 moves that black can consider playing. And that is labeled A, B, and C. And normally, the easiest, strongest response is just playing A. It really looks to undercut this. It fully blocks the connection, but it doesn't do as much to kill this stone. So there's a lot more potential, a lot more aji for this stone here. The worst of the responses is playing C, typically, because white can play the hane underneath, and black can't play here because white gets this Atari into this Atari. And so that would be an obvious disaster. So black has to play here. White gets to push again, which threatens to connect up, and so black will play here to capture this stone. But there are even more follow-ups here. White can then play this, and black has to capture. Black can't descend, because then these 2 stones die, and this is obviously an absolute disaster. So black has to capture, and then white later on can play this. And you can see all of a sudden black's corners pretty much just disappear. So sometimes we need to respond this way by playing on top of the stone at c4, but it's typically not a good result. And then we have something like d3, and again, lots of options here. We could potentially play here to threaten to connect up, and then go and play a shape move like this, and all of a sudden you see we're getting a lot of eye space, and it's not going to be too difficult for white to live here. With that said, this can get very complicated, but it's important to know that there is just a lot of aji here, and it's difficult for both players. So this might turn into a situation where if the players don't know the variations, the stronger fighter will end up winning. I just wanted to point out that there very, very, very much is aji here. So getting back to the game in question again, I would play here. I'd expect white to block, and then I would jump here. And it's going to get tricky for white. Another option is black could play something like here, look to reduce the side, and then after white plays here, now play a move like this. A little more complicated of a technique, but we now have another friend here, and it's going to make it difficult for white to kill both of these stones. And if anything lives here, this is going to be really, really, really great for black. And so I would expect something to live here. A potential result that's pretty straightforward on this board after this invasion is we can see white blocking here. Black can then play this kosumi. White can look to capture, to cut this off, and then black can play this shape move. And you can already see that black already has an eye here, and is threatening to get another. If white plays this Atari, black will connect, and now white needs to protect this, and black can play here, which is really going to just tear apart the side. Black's probably going to live here. This is pretty bad. So I wouldn't expect white to play that. White would probably block here to protect their side, and then black can just play here, and then all of a sudden black is alive because black can threaten to connect up at e2 or play a4 for life. Black also has the pinch at b6 to potentially give up the corner to take the side. There's a lot here, but it's worth pointing out this actually isn't too hard for black to live here. Conversely, it's still not too difficult for white to live here, though I know personally I would probably have trouble living this corner, but AI showed me that it is very, very achievable. But once I think on a human level, especially for a double-digit Q player, once we make this exchange, this F18 for G18 exchange, I would consider this corner safe enough. I would be impressed in one of my games if my opponent was able to live in here, even though AI was able to find a way to do it. And then so after this exchange, it's going to be white's turn, and now white has a little bit of work to do. This is omitting the fact that we've just got this huge uncertainty over here. White most assuredly needs to play this move, but it's tricky to see just how important this is because Go is hard and mid game is very difficult, which is why we wanted to go into these videos. So I think that's just where we're going to leave this one. We've done our job of going over what I look at in this position, how I'd expect the game to play out, and what factors I consider before I make my moves in big, difficult mid-game situations. So let me know what you guys think about this type of video. I think it's something that could be really helpful, again, because just middle game is difficult in general. And we get to look at actual games that get sent in where players of around your strength have these questions. And if you have questions like this, feel free, join the Discord, and you can send these questions. If you have a game you're like, hey, I have no idea where I should have played here, what my plan should have been, can you please help? So anyway, I hope you guys are looking forward to 2025. Can't be much worse than 2024. But you want to know what? In a year from now, I might be saying the same thing. I probably will be saying the same thing. So I hope today is a good day for you. Anyway, that's where we'll leave this one. Thank you guys for coming out for another ride in the Strugglebus, where every wheel is an empty triangle. Have a good one, guys.